prayed for this man, Dr. Dale. I promise you I'm not lying, and people might not believe, but that's on them. I lived it. I finished praying that prayer. 10 seconds later, this boy's heart started back.
Really got on Rex, ain't playing around. When I go get it, stop playing around. Really got on Rex, ain't playing around. Black man, white coat, shit, we up right now, yeah. You gotta set you a goal. You gotta accomplish your.
What's the craziest thing you've ever seen as a surgeon?
As a surgeon, the craziest thing I've seen is full-out cardiac arrest, heart stops in the middle of my surgery. This was one of the first surgeries I did where I was primary driver in the surgery. So we were just about done, put the chest tube in, we put the patient on their back, we did compressions, and the patient did well. So that had to be the craziest thing I've seen as a surgeon.
Wow, so basically the patient just died on the table.
Just died on the table, and the best part is they did extremely well that night and moving forward. I didn't sleep much that night, but the patient did well.
Amen. Amen to that. Amen to that. Hey, what is up, fam? It's Dr. Dale, and this is the Black Men and White Coats podcast. So, hey, look, super excited about today's guest. This guy I've known for a few years now. We like-minded, do similar types of things, and have, I think, very similar types of values. So I'm super excited to bring his story back to you guys. If I remember, you heard the story in the past, but bring his story back to you guys with a direct conversation. Before we dive into it, let me remind you guys, Black Men and White Coats documentary right now, at the time of this recording, at least you can get it for free. Watch it for free. Members.bmwcmovie.com. Members.bmwcmovie.com. Go to the link, check it out, watch it for free. If you're listening to this and you haven't watched the documentary, what are you doing? What are you doing? You definitely got to watch the documentary, right? That's the first thing. Second thing is also go to bmwcevents.com, bmwcevents.com, and go there if you want to learn more about our summits. We got these Black Men and White Coats youth summits across the country, so see when we're going to be in an area close to you so you can come check out one of our summits. So again, members.bmwcevents.com. I don't know if I said that link right the first time, but that's the right link, members.bmwcevents.com. And then you can just go to bmwcevents.com to learn more about our Black Men and White Coats Youth Summit. All right, man, I'm here now with my boy. It's Dr. Emmanuel McNeely, but I still think Manny Mac all the time. I still think Manny Mac. Do people still call you Manny Mac?
Oh yeah, that was my big start, Manny Mac Medicine on YouTube, Instagram, and then I switched up on them.
All right, Manny Mac Medicine. So hey, that's just always stick to my head because that's what I knew you as first, right? All right, so I might go back and forth. So I'm gonna hit you with the Manny Mac Medicine one first, all right? So Manny Mac, tell me this: when you first got your long white coat and became a full-fledged medical doctor, right? No short coat anymore, not a med student, but a long white coat. What was your welcome to medicine moment?
My welcome to medicine moment was intern year, my first month on nights. And I had a patient go into AFib with RVR for Dr. Dale knows exactly what that is, but for a fresh intern, brand new doctor, my heart started going fast. And I had to figure out, okay, I heard about this. I studied this, I know what this is, but to actually have that patient in the ICU and to have those nurses call you and say, doctor, what would you like me to give them? That was my wake up to being a full long white coat doctor moment. And it was about 2 a.m. and I'll never forget it.
And so how'd you end up handling it? Because I'm thinking when for the listeners, there's two ways to kind of handle this, right? Intern. One way is you go try to figure it out yourself. Other way is, nurse, what do you think we should do? Right? So which one of those cards did you pull out as a brand new intern?
I chose option number 3. They say load the boat, Dr. Dale. So I let my senior know. I loaded the boat, and then I said, hey, I just want to let you know, this is what I would like to do. Would you like me to do this? Would you like to come by? I try to cover all my bases.
Hey, that's exactly how you do it. So, hey, listeners, that he just dropped a gem on you, right? Hey, this is what I'd like to do. What do you think, or would you like, right? So always give your own ideas, your own plan first. They can always say no, but it makes it look like you're part of the game, right? All right, so a lot of stuff that we can talk about here that we are going to talk about because I'm excited again because you and I have very similar types of, ideals and such, I believe. But let's take it all the way back. Yeah. So before the white coat, before college, all that stuff, let's take it back to childhood. Tell me, what kind of child were you? Were you the kid who was into sports? Did you always know you were going to be a doctor? What got you going as a kid?
Dr. Dale, I want you to imagine a short, fat kid with gap teeth. And this is the class clown, shortest in my family, shortest out of everybody. And when you're short and fat, you have to have a good sense of humor. So I was the class clown. from day one, and I was always in gifted programs. So once my dad switched me into these programs, I start acting out. I'm joking around. My dad is a very large black man, so he would show up randomly, and I think I credit him to this day for me becoming a surgeon because I got my act together real fast.
So he would just show up in your class randomly?
Just show up in my class randomly. He's like, "You want me to whoop you in front of all these people?" And then before you knew it, I was on honor roll, and I went to a gifted program, and I was still acting out, but then I had a growth spurt, so everything on the inside, I'm still like a short, fat kid, so I'm cracking jokes all the time. But yeah, that was definitely my start. Just I was real involved in the church. My dad's a minister, so I would be at church most days of the week, 4 out of 7 days. So I was, I'm a drummer. I was telecommunications that's the church word for media team. And long story short, I was on every team you could imagine, acting up in class. I was interested in sports, but since I was out of shape, I played football in high school, but I was mostly the drummer. So I was like the main drummer for our high school. We traveled. Then I had a growth spurt. And then people were like, "Why aren't you playing basketball?" I'm like, "Hey, I've been a nerd all the way. I'm not used to this full large body that I got."
So how tall are you now?
Right now I'm 6'7". So most people are shocked. They're absolutely
Goodness
shocked.
gracious.
Yeah, they're shocked. They're like, "You don't play basketball?" If I had $1 every day, I would be a rich man.
I would never, that's the thing about social media. So you and I have never met in person then, huh?
No, even though, we've known each other for about 7 years, but never in person. Nope.
Oh, that's crazy, man. Because I would have never guessed you're 6'7" just by like the social stuff. Because you get, chest up. You can't tell how tall somebody is, right? So next time you got to take a picture next to somebody. I'm 5'10", so you got to take a picture next to an average height person so people can see. You'll see how tall you really are there.
Oh yeah.
So you talked about being the goof, the not goofster, whatever you want to call it, the class clown. Were you a class clown who the teachers were okay with because you were getting stuff done, or were you a class clown who was like getting in trouble repeatedly? That's which one of those guys were you?
I was option one. That was the only option where I could still, go home. So I'd be like, "Hey, Dad, I got straight A's though. You can't be upset. I got straight A's. I did this project right." But yeah, I would always test the limits. And that started in middle school. All my friends, I'm from the northern suburbs of Chicago. So all my friends went to the very large school. It wasn't best in academics, but it was where all your friends were. My dad took me across town to the accelerated program. So it was a culture shock for me. I was like, man, but we're learning Latin. We're learning all kind of stuff. We're learning Spanish early on. So it was a great program, but I started acting out. And that's when I got my act together. But it was a great foundation. Yeah, it was a good foundation.
So tell me, how old were you when you decided medicine was going to be the way for you to go?
I always knew I liked chemistry. Chemistry was my major. I did medicinal biochemistry undergrad. So I'll start at the beginning. I got a job. We had like an apprenticeship in our city where you could go and shadow and work, and it was a scholarship program. So I won that program, and I started shadowing at like a cancer center in the mall.
How old are you now?
I was 16, 17 years old. So that's when I really started getting interested. I ended up earning a job as a pharmacy technician, and I was like the youngest in there. We had 3 women in that program, in that department, get pregnant at the same time. So I'm working 30 hours a week and going to high school full time and shadowing. I shadowed one of the surgeons. He was the chief medical officer. And ever since then, 17 years old, I said, I'm going to be a surgeon. I don't know how I'm going to do this. My parents never went to college, so I was first generation. And that's when I made my decision, 17 years old.
So that speaks to the importance of exposure and seeing people. So what do you think? Had you never seen that surgeon, or, had you never seen them, where do you think, which direction would you have gone in life? What are your general thoughts around that?
I think I would have ended up doing business or something, Dr. Dale, because my family did business. Nobody ever, I had my aunt is a nurse, but nobody ever went into like medicine in my direct family. My sister went into law. My brother went into business and ended up becoming a teacher. So I definitely don't think I would have ended up as a surgeon. I might have done something in the medical field maybe, but exposure is everything. And that's why I'm so adamant about it today.
You're probably a few generations, not generations, but you're a little bit after me. When you were coming up, what were you watching on TV? So like, my generation, right, it's Cosby Show, A Different World, those things. I don't know, were you part of that era, or were you a little bit after that? Like, what were your pop culture influences for your career choice?
Oh, number one, The Cosby Show. We watched that every night, and I was like, oh man, a black doctor. I was like, oh man, I like his sweaters. I like his swag. I like when he's from New York. I'm like, man, he's funny. I'm like, I can do that. And I love seeing black people in a good light. Growing up in the '90s, I'm a '90s baby. I was born in 1990, so it was like I always looked up to those kind of shows and people just doing well. And my favorite movie coming up was like Nutty Professor. I'm like, man, this man is so smart. He's into science. He's funny. So I think in between those two, being a comedic kind of guy, and then also seeing successful black people, I always knew that I wanted to go into something science just because how my brain works and how I enjoyed those programs. So yeah, I was watching that, and then Fresh Prince, Will Smith, that was my man, and we still praying for Will, but we still praying for my man. But that's, any Will Smith movie, that my whole life, that's all I've been watching. And yeah, the '90s, man, that was a good time.
What is your favorite movie right now ever?
Oh, still got to be Hitch, man. Will Smith has got to be Hitch. I watched that movie every night, all through college, undergrad, everything.
It's funny, you kind of dress like Hitch. That's the Hitch swag you got going on.
I'm letting all my secrets go, Dr. Dale. I'm on your pod today. I gotta let all my secrets out.
Yeah, I don't know what I was thinking about it. I watched John Q again recently, and that kind of bumped up my list. I'm that kind of guy who likes those strange types of movies. I like Something the Lord Made with Vivian Thomas. That's been one of my favorites. John Q just kind of bumped its way back up the list after I forgot how good it was. It bumped its way back up on the list. So that's Denzel, Will. I don't know who gets probably Denzel gets the upper hand, right?
Yeah.
But shout out to those guys for holding it down in Hollywood or whatever. So you mentioned you had some siblings. Tell me, what were your dynamics like with your siblings growing up? I got 3 right now, little kiddos, and just the dynamic, just watching them, like, oh my goodness, y'all just chill out. What was that like for you? What kind of influence? Because you said 2 other siblings, I think.
Yeah, I got 2 siblings.
Yeah, 2 siblings, and they, it sounds like they all did well, right? I think you said business and law. So what was that dynamic as a child? Were y'all pushing each other? Where are you in line? Are you the oldest? Were you the influence? How does that sibling influence work?
No, that's a great question. I'm the youngest, so my brother was the oldest, but he was like the star athlete, triathlete, basketball, football, track. So he was really into that, and then like business, kind of following after my dad. My sister was really good at sports and school. So she was like the captain of her basketball team, played a little ball in college, and then went into law school. For me, I had a late start with the sports. I wanted to do it, but it wasn't, I was a little short, fat kid, so I wasn't able to keep up.
You're just gonna keep on saying that.
Yeah, I mean that's deep down. That's still till today. So I still
still
like
hurt.
That. Yeah, so I ended up playing. I went into the arts. I was playing the drums. I was playing the drums and doing all of that. And then I went into science real big. And then I started doing like those programs at school. So I would say my parents definitely had a huge influence on me, my siblings as well. But my parents, they definitely instilled strong values. They said, we don't care what you guys do, but you're going to be the best at it, and you're going to work hard, and then you're going to keep God first and foremost.
Amen.
And that foundation is really carried on throughout my adulthood.
So, 2 quick questions. Number one, when you keep on saying the short, fat kid, like how short are we talking? What grade? What age? Because I'm thinking you're probably calling short like a regular height kid. That's probably what I'm thinking, right?
Yeah, so relatively short because my dad is big. He's like 6'3". My mom is tall. She's like 5'9". So I was the shortest in my family, but I started high school like 5'5", and I was like 190 pounds. So I was on the line in football, and then I ended up graduating 6'4". So it was like a real fast switch.
You graduated high school at 6'4" and grew another 3 inches in college?
Yep. It was wild. And I was the shortest in my family and everything. I didn't even know if I was going to be able to catch up. But then high school hit, and then sophomore year I grew like 4 inches that summer. And then it was no looking back after that, man. So, yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, you're short, still taller than I was. I think I was 5'4" when I started high school, finished at 5'10". So you're short, still taller than I was. The second question, we've talked about drumming a lot. And I like to think when I see doctors, right? Doctors are a career where obviously you got to put in a lot of work to get there. You have to kind of, I'm not going to say we're all type A because I don't think I'm type A necessarily, but you have to be very disciplined. I am very disciplined. Most of us are very disciplined people. With the drumming, was that the thing? Was that your discipline? Is that what gave you the tool set? Because most doctors you see, they've done something repetitively throughout your life. Not most, but a lot of them, the ones who are doing things like what stuff we do, right? We've done something repetitively throughout our lives that kind of helped us develop a level of discipline probably above most people. Was drumming, is that what drumming did for you?
Yeah, for sure. So I started when I was in fourth grade, so 10 years old. And I initially got interested in it just because my brother played saxophone, my sister played a lot of instruments. So, my family, we were always, you got to get into stuff, you got to be focused and then give your all. So I chose drums, and even at church, I was playing the drums. So that's playing at every service a couple times a week. And then that's going to school and playing. And then in high school, I was like section leader for 4 years and started doing I was center snare, and that's when drumline was out. So we had
Oh,
band camp, and I would literally practice. We would be practicing 8 hours a day during band camp, and then after school, we practiced 3-4 hours. And I went to a large school, like 3,000 students in my high school. So, I was all in. I didn't even play varsity football because I was section leader of the drum line. So I played the first 2 years of football, and then I stopped, just commitment. So I would say, yeah, like my dad said, whatever you do, you're going to, give it your best. You're going to hear me really like give him credit this whole time too, because I still like hear his voice in the back of my head when I'm making decisions. So yeah, that's definitely it was my focus, and we gave our all in everything we did. So I chose the drums, and I still played at my local church up until like a couple years ago. So it's been a lifelong thing.
nice. I love that. So going to college, tell me about that. The decision, which college did you choose? What went into making that decision? Right, I get a lot of kids trying to figure out, hey, how do I decide where to go to college at? And specifically, I'm curious what yours, the drumming aspect of it, right? Because like a lot of athletes, you're thinking, oh, I'm gonna go play pro sports for drumming. Were you thinking somehow you want to be a pro musician somehow, or were you thinking just, hey, let me just get through college, play drums a little bit, etc.?
Yeah, I think it was like the second thing. So I was involved in the church. I was biting off more than I could chew, and that's going to be one lesson that I've been sharing with all my mentees. You got all these talents, you got all of these interests, hyper focus into that thing that's most important at that time. So I chose a college that was close to my house. I drove like 30, 40 minutes. It was University of Wisconsin, but it was like right over the borderline into like Illinois going over. So I got a scholarship there, and it pretty much cost me nothing my first year. So I got into there because I didn't get into my number one school. And that's something I always tell everybody too. My buddy went to University of Illinois, the Chicago campus. I wanted to get into that school. I felt like my ACT, my grades were real tight, and I think God blocked me from getting to that school because it's close to home. It's like party school a little bit. No shade to anybody who goes there, but at that time, if you know everybody in the city, it's going to be
Yeah.
very hard to focus on pre med. So I went to University of Wisconsin, where there is nothing but time to focus and study, and then I transferred down to Florida. I went to a small private Christian school in Florida because I found a research undergrad. So I started pursuing like, medicinal chemistry, and I wanted to get into, research and development. And that's how I ended up down in Florida. And ever since then, I stayed down here. But even throughout school, once I went to the Christian school in Florida, I played the drums in chapel, and I was in like the gospel choir playing the drums. So yeah, drumming was definitely an interest, but I was able to hyper focus in school, and I think the decision was made for me about where I was going to school because I kept reapplying to that party school, and it was just because my best friend was going, and I never got in there. Even in medical school, I applied just cause, and I didn't get in there. So it was interesting.
Nice, nice. What would you say was your biggest challenge in undergrad? What was the hardest thing for you to deal with in undergrad?
Learning how to study. I could walk in and there was a test that day, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'll be all right. Because, I was an active listener. So, like, I could repeat what the teacher was telling me. I kind of had like a photographic memory, AKA, I could really like hyper focus for a little bit, and I felt like I would be okay, especially with my gifted program all the way up from middle school through high school. So I was always accelerated, taking AP classes and juggling a lot. I would probably divvy up 30 minutes to do all my work. And then, I got to go play the drums or go to a church conference or do something or work. My dad had us working all these jobs with like family business. So my biggest thing was learning how to study and time management. For the first time in my life, I couldn't do everything I wanted to do. I couldn't be involved everywhere and be the socialite. In high school, out of 3,000 students, they voted me most outgoing. I was the socialite, the drummer. I was there. I'm like, they called me preacher boy at football. I would pray before the football game. Like, I was involved in everything. I was in this apprenticeship, winning scholarships, serving the community. And I got punched in the face freshman year. For the first time, I was trying to work 30 hours and take 18 credits. And I was like, oh, I already know how to do these classes. I got a C in biology 102. And this is a class I took in an AP. And I was just retaking it. And I was like, I don't need to study. No, you need to study. So that was a wake-up call. And everybody needs to know getting a wake-up call can be a turning point in your whole career. Do not allow your adversity to stop you. That could have been the end for me because I had pre-med advisors. Oh, you can't get into medical school with a C. And if I allowed them to crush my dreams, I wouldn't be a surgeon today.
Yeah, I had I recorded an episode earlier with my mentor, Dr. Els Ingram, which we'll put out, of course. And he was talking about something similar, how he got in high school. I think he got a really low grade. I don't know if he failed, but he got a really low grade in math. The same type of thing, like, oh my goodness, this math thing just kind of whipped my butt. So he took the opposite approach. Instead of running, he engaged with it. He went to it. He started studying and busting his butt. Then he ended up going to college and majoring, choosing math as his major. So that's what you just said, right? When you get hit in the face, you can't run away. You got to go at that thing. That's why I became an ICU doctor. I became an ICU doctor because I remember as a resident, like walking before I did my ICU rotations, my big one, just walking through the ICU and just kind of hearing those beeps and seeing the codes and kind of freaking out. And I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of scared about it, right? So I just thought, man, I've got to go embrace this. I got to get in the ICU. I got to do more, and then end up embracing it, taking it on, and fall in love with it, right? So, like you said, sometimes you just get punched in the face, but if you go embrace that thing, it can be that turning point. Like exactly what you just said. I love it. So. The other thing that you said, which I really like, which I think the listeners need to pay attention to, parents, to whoever's listening, you mentioned how you were in college up University of Wisconsin, and then you saw something about your college down in Florida, this research opportunity or something, right? So I love that. Talk a little bit more about that proactiveness, looking for things and taking the risk to transfer, from Illinois to Florida, a place where I don't know how familiar you were with it before that, but just talk about that, like, being diligent and proactive to go find the things you need to make your dream come true on your own. And second of all, taking the risk to pick up and move and go somewhere. That's a big deal kind of when you think about it for an 18, 19-year-old kid, something like that.
Yeah. And I'm so happy you highlighted that point. That was the first of many that I hope to mention in this interview I got knocked down and then I took where I was at and then I did my best to level up. And it wasn't just because, I got to do this. It was really like, you have no choice but to succeed. If this happened to you, it happened for a reason. I deeply believe like all things work together for my good. And that is a prime example. So I
Romans 8:28. We're gonna mark that. Romans 8:28. Let's go. All right.
And every student, you need to have Romans 8:28 because until this day, I listen to that and I meditate on that. It's so important. I didn't get into my primary school. After first semester, I applied again. It showed that I was like, okay, I can do this. Didn't get in. And it was huge leaving my house, my community, my parents, my family, and going to Florida. My mom did not take it very, very well. And that is something that you all need to know. If you want to go into medical school, if you want to go be something great, you're going to have to make informed, wise decisions that everyone is not going to agree with in that moment. But you need to make sure they're calculated. You need to have mentorship, someone who has done it, and you need to have a plan and work that plan. So my mom was heartbroken, but I knew deep down inside, I can't keep working 30 hours a week, being available to everyone's text message and phone call, and be a doctor. Like, I just proved that it's not possible in these last semester or two. So I need to go somewhere and focus, lock in. I'm interested in this school. a scholarship became available, a partial, and Dr. Dale, I went out there. I said, man, all I got to do is my homework. This is way less than my 40 hours of social events per week and then studying on top. So the number one message I give to every mentee that I've had over the last kind of 14 years we've been doing our program, and my wife and I, you got to do one thing at a time. Great. We talk about all these extra stuff on your application and volunteerism. That's good. But if you don't get first things done first, you are missing the mark. And that was my story, even trying to get into medical school after not getting in my first time.
Now, facts, man. That's huge right there. So listeners, pay attention to that. This idea of focusing. And I got a book on my bookshelf over here, a great book that I love called The One Thing, by Gary Keller, where he's always talking about, hey, you got to pick that one thing and be great at it. And I honestly think it's funny. I was speaking in California recently, and I talked about that concept about choose one thing, blah blah blah, and I said, same thing. You said you can only really be great at one thing, and somebody came up to me like, nah, Dr. Dale, I'm great at a lot of things. I'm like, you're probably good at a lot of things, right? But there's a difference between being good and being great at something. And if you're gonna be cutting into people's bodies, you need to be great at that. I don't want a good surgeon. You want to be I want every surgeon should be a great surgeon. I'm an ICU doctor, right? We should be great at what we do, not just good. There's a huge difference there. Med school, right? So tell me, where did you go to med school and what led to that choice? I've noticed this is something that I want to start talking about more on my podcast. I'm going to start asking people, right? We always talk about, I went to med school here, but why that med school? What could you have gone to a different med school? And I want to hear about the decision process and actually choosing the med school you chose to go to.
Excellent story. So I took my MCAT, did not do well, and I was like, man, I got good grades in undergrad. I know this stuff. It's going to translate to my actual exam. You got this. So, and I learned about the MCAT later on, not freshman year, sophomore year, junior year. So that's why right now I wrote a book, and all we do is prepare people who want to be doctors and let them know, prepare for this test now. Long story short, I retake my test, finally get a score decent enough to get in. This is after I had applied one cycle and didn't get into one school, didn't get one interview, and it was heartbreaking because I was down to my last $20.86. I took a screenshot, and while I'm sitting there and I got that MCAT, that was rejection letters, I said, you know what? I'm going to mark this day. This is going to be the lowest point for me. There's no way to go but up from here. This didn't happen. This ain't my first disappointment. Remember the beginning of my story. This won't be my last, unfortunately. However, I'm going to keep going, and God's going to bless me to do this. I had a knowing on the inside of me that this is what I am called to do. I applied that next year, and I got more mentorship. I retook my MCAT, went up 9 points, and I had a better plan. I wasn't using practice questions to prepare for the MCAT, as crazy as that sounds. I didn't have enough money for that. So I was reading my undergrad textbooks again, really getting the concepts, and running out of time. You don't get to take 2.5 minutes to read through a question. You got to make quick decisions. Once I honed in and I borrowed one of my friends, she's at Penn State right now. Shout out to Dr. Patricia Louie. I borrowed her MCAT books and her login. I'm doing all her questions. Kaplan. I'm like, this is great. And I go up those 9 points. I got blessed to get into 3 medical schools. And I got into some bigger schools, but I chose Florida Atlantic University because that's where I was. It was in-state tuition. And my dad said something real wise to me. He said, if you leave, you got to go learn a new area, a new system, new teachers. You got so many new things. Med school is going to be hard enough. So if you can be there and get in-state tuition, he's like, and I got blessed to get a partial scholarship. He's like, why would you leave that and go with all these unknown and variables? And for me, that made sense because I had already been a graduate, a TA. I used to work in the gross anatomy lab and do prosections for the cadavers for the medical students. And I had taught biology, the class that I struggled in. I taught so many students, over 200 students, and I won TA of the Year award because I was so passionate. Because I was like, I'm that kid in the back who was failing this. So I chose my school because I had a community here. It made the most sense. It was in state. And I think it was a great decision in hindsight.
Man, that's awesome. And that's, again, That's a very similar story to what Dr. Ingram was telling me. I love this idea, the concept about when you've gone through something that makes you that much more passionate to help other people. Before I forget, what's the name of your book? Say the name of your book and also the name of your foundation,
Yes.
Dream Foundation.
Yeah, the Dream Protection Guide. My wife, Dr. Sarah McNeely, and I wrote this book, and it's literally our workbook for our foundation, the Dr. McNeely Dream Project. We just gave away 5 scholarships last year to some 5 pre-meds in our area, and I'm very excited. We've done this program for 14 years. Even before we got into medical school, grad school, we went back to all our schools in Chicago and around the country. We started traveling and just teaching students what we had learned along the way, teaching them and sharing these stories. And it grew so big where we've been getting invited to churches, giving commencement speeches. So the Dream Protection Guide, it's available on Amazon, and we still use that book to this day to lead our workshops.
So you guys definitely check that out. And I love that, man. You're just saying so many things that are like just jewels, man. You started doing the work before you got to where you thought you were supposed to be at.
Yeah,
Right.
Dr. Dale, to whom much is given, much is required.
Luke
And
12:42.
yes, sir.
You gotta
Yeah,
drop
and
it.
I hope
Love
y'all
that one.
writing these down because
Yeah.
these aren't just like a lot of people like, oh, you quoting a lot of scriptures. If you cried at night praying to get into medical school, your roommate gets into medical school, you still didn't, you take your MCAT over and over, you're discouraged and you're at rock bottom, and people are like, why are you still trying this? You got to go deep. And there is nothing deeper than having that scripture and believing that faith. And I don't care what your background is, you got to have faith if you're going to make it through this. And to this day, right now, I was on call yesterday. These patients I'm operating on, you need faith that it's going to go well, so it's really important. But back to the question, to whom much is given, much is required. That is really important. I got blessed to do well in undergrad. I got a second chance to go to a new school. How dare I go back to Chicago with the people in my community that I know and they don't know anything? The first thing my wife and I, we were dating back then, we went to summer schools at the local middle school. And I looked those kids in the face. I said, you are not a failure. I was class clown in middle school. I was in the same boat and you all can do it. So we gave them dream projects. Dr. Dale, see those kids' face light up and say, I can be this, I can be that. We made them research what they want to do and give a 5-minute presentation. These students, for the last 14 years, they get emails, phone calls of students who ended up going to medical school, at the same time I went or something like that, just because we started the work all the way back then. And there is nothing more rewarding than helping someone else get over the hump. It's not enough for me to get over the hump. I committed my life to sacrifice for other people because I need a plow. I need to make the pathway easier. And if you're called to be a trailblazer and a forerunner, your job is not only to get over the hump, you got to empower the people behind you. And that's been a part of my purpose.
Love it, love it, love it. Most challenging part of medical school?
Learning how to study over again. You did something in undergrad. I was teaching the gross anatomy class. So I was prosecting and creating questions as a graduate teaching assistant. So I knew the human body. You pin something, I knew it just because of the hours I spent in the cadaver lab. That was 30% of our grade. 70% of our grade was foundations of biological medicine, all of this stuff. It was drinking out of a fire hose. And for those who aren't familiar with that, what you would spend a year learning, say in undergrad or even grad school, you would actually get through that in about 4 weeks in medical school. And it's unbelievable the amount of information. I'll give you an example, Dr. Dale. In grad school, I was so determined. I got blessed to have I went to grad school to make myself more competitive. I got blessed to have like a 3.88 GPA when I applied for medical school. And I mentioned that because my undergrad GPA was nothing close to that. I'm talking about second chances. So I went into medical school and said, I'm going to memorize every word. This photographic memory, I'm going to write everything down. And that worked for me in grad school. I ran out of time. I was studying all wrong. And every week I felt like I was relearning how to study. So now I need to, see videos. I need to sit in a group. I need to get through the information faster. That was single-handedly the hardest thing. Learning how I learn best, that was the hardest thing about medical school.
How did you do? So, when you talk to some, URMs, minorities, quote unquote minorities, there's the concern about third and fourth year med school where things become a little bit more subjective, dealing with different attendings. You might, have different interests, different likes, different tastes. You seem like a very social person. Your class count clown, most outgoing. How was that for you? Did you have any issue at all with that? Just because you're so, you're so easy to talk to. You're so like, was that pretty easy for you to get through those last 2 years?
This is almost it's not a trigger moment, but this is going to be just open and honest. If you're funny, let's put it this way. When I graduated, I was the only black male graduating in my medical school class. Many people already believe you're here because you're filling a quota. They didn't know I turned down money in large medical schools who were begging me to go to stay here. I had some evaluations from some people that says he seems disinterested, even though I, in medical school, stopped in between second and third year and did 2 years of research at Johns Hopkins, where I was doing clinical trials. I worked 70 to 80 hours a week, and I was in the operating room all in between. I didn't sleep. I published several papers and comments saying, I don't know if he's interested in medicine. He looks disinterested at the table. He's a poor communicator. Now, Dr. Dell, I speak around the country at this point. I'm a youth minister at this point. I preach on the weekends. Like, I speak for a living. I had already been, and I'm bragging on God, I had already been on national television interviews. I've been on regional. I've done so much talking. And I went and took these evals, and I had to sit through, a formal meeting. I said, I don't understand. I want every underrepresented minority to hear me and hear me clear. And I'm going to say this as loud as I can. I'm going to lean in. You will be questioned about your abilities, about how you got to where you are, why you are where you are. And the number one thing you can do is know that God put you here for a reason. And I'm going to tell you why. I don't care if you published all these papers. After a while, Dr. Dale, it got to me. It got to me by being the only one in that space. It got to me about being questioned. Do I really know this? Medical school is hard enough, let alone the mental exercise of going up and down. How are they evaluating me? I better cut off my partner and say the correct answer before them. I told them, I'm publishing papers on this stuff. Like, what do you mean I don't seem interested? Or I had one teacher say, I don't think he knows what he's talking about. I had just aced one of the exam. I looked at her. I said, this is a 3-hour exam. I did really well. Oh, I know your test scores, but blah, 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 blah. I'm not bitter. I want the next generation to be better. I had thin skin, and today my skin is getting thick, Teflon. And if you don't have Teflon skin, the process will give it to you. But I want you to do one thing. Don't be angry. Keep that heart pure. Because, at the end of the day, guard your heart above all, because from it flows the issues of life. If you get bitter, they won. Keep your heart pure. Come into safe spaces like this. Let's talk about it. And guess what we're going to do? We're going to move forward and be excellent. Because the same people criticizing you are the same ones saying, congratulations, I knew you could do it.
That's how it goes. That's how it goes, man.
Yep.
Man, so what in those situations specifically, how did those, I understand the idea about stay pure and, don't get bitter, but how did you practically deal with some of those situations, right? So, you mentioned you have to sit down and talk to them. Like, how did those result? Like, did they impact you with a grade wise? Would they give you low grades, or did they go back and have to change stuff? What was the practicality behind that?
Yeah, it was rough. So, if anybody in your file writes anything negative, it's going to be reviewed over and over. And I called it confirmation bias, So sometimes you would have to, have a couple meetings and come in early. I got to the point where I had to come in early and demonstrate my knowledge base. And I'm like, this is extra work apart from my exam that's actually could possibly negatively impact me. But, Dr. Dale, I'll tell you why it worked out in my favor. And I want people to really get this. I could have easily been angry, but what I did was I got even more efficient. I start memorizing stuff, and when they ask questions, I would talk so fast and have it all ready for them. And then I made sure it made me better. But on the mental side, it was a whole bunch of prayer, and I reached out to some black men in medicine, some black surgeons, and I told them about it, and they coached me up. And every time I talked to them, they were like my community. And it was so important. It made all the difference. If you're the only one that looks like you in your space, how do you not feel isolated, especially in the face of adversity? So you need some backing. And that's why I think, Black Men in White Coats is so important. I remember going on the website, just scrolling through. I watched these videos for hours before getting to medical school. I memorized everybody's name, everybody's story. To this day, I see people, I get starstruck because so many years just studying Black men who were great. By the time I got to this moment, I had to actually get community. So that's how I made it through. And it's going to be vital for everybody, and this stuff doesn't stop, you got to keep focused and you got to make sure you get good backing.
I love that, man. That community thing is huge. Community is huge. Favorite Bible verse?
Oh, man. Proverbs 3:5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not to your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him and he'll direct your path. And if you give me 30 seconds, I'll preach it real quick.
Preach it.
Trust in the Lord with all your heart, not half of it. A lot of times we do things and we trust him until we hit adversity. And then it's like, oh, you let me down last time, God. No, lean not to your own understanding. It ain't got to make sense to you why you didn't get in medical school the first time. I'm actually preparing you to get a scholarship, and I'm going to put you in a better situation. I'm going to make sure your skin is thicker, and I'm going to make sure you're more efficient and focused. That was what my adversity was all about. Now, when you hit adversity as a surgeon and you're not sleeping, you're going to be able to pass your board exams, your step 3 exam on no sleep because you prepared so well. So I want everyone to know, if you trust in God with all your heart, and if you don't lean your own understanding, but you acknowledge him, kind of like what we're doing right now, he'll direct your path. I don't have to hope that things will go well. I know they'll go well because my faith is in him.
Amen. 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 God's got a plan, man. People don't realize that, but God's got a plan. And sometimes no matter what we want, right? It's not about what we want. It's thy will be done. And I struggle with that myself sometimes. Right? I'm thinking like, oh, I want this. I want this. Like, nah, man, it's not about me. We are not the main character in this movie, right? We're the extras in the background, just trying to be a part of something great, right? And whether or not we're here, it's still gonna happen. The greatness is happening with or without us. So it's just a privilege and honor for us to be here, man. Surgery. You go through all this medical stuff, you do spine research, things like that. And I actually remember when you went to do that fellowship. I remember we were communicating about something around that time, but I remember that very well. What led you to choose surgery? Because we've talked about medicine, but we haven't talked about specifically surgery, other than the fact that you saw the surgeon when you were young. But what led you to confirm that, like once you got into med school?
Instant gratification. I love the fact that I could see an issue and get to the resolve of it. A lot of things in medicine are gray. There are many factors, etiologies. There are many external factors that will dictate how someone does, or if they're predisposed to a risk factor, if they'll get better. Surgery is one of those few specialties I feel that you're able to take someone from point A to point B like that. And I'm not saying all surgeries are without complications or risks. However, personally, that's what drew me to that. I love seeing a patient post-op doing well. Nothing makes me more excited or happy. I love talking to that family from the beginning in the ED at midnight and seeing them post-op and they got a smile on their face. And I told them, I told you it was going to be all right. Or, hey, I told you, I think you'll do well. Not giving guarantees, of course. We don't do that in medicine. However, just really loving on patients, seeing their issue and being able to provide a solution. I love it. And I feel like surgery also allows you to do a lot of research. And that's kind of how my mind works. I like to find issues and make things better. And I'm really excited. I think I fell in love with research. I was an orthopedic surgery research fellow down in Fort Lauderdale. And by studying it and seeing how we can really impact people's outcomes, that really piqued my interest in surgery as well.
Nice. I love it. You pray for your patients? Do you pray for your patients and do you pray with your patients?
Yeah. This is such a good example. I had so many examples. First of all, I'll do one. This is a very young kid, almost an infant age, drowned victim. And I'm working the emergency room. And this patient is there, mother, it's chaos like you wouldn't believe it. For those who haven't been in a trauma center or an emergency room, if there's a drowned victim or something like that, or if there's a big event that occurred, it's not just the doctors and nurses there. It's also the police. It's also investigators. There might be someone with a camera. And when there's a very vulnerable person, it could be a lot of people. It's 50 people, Dr. Dale, in the hallway. and I'm on, and I have to go see this patient, and they're doing compressions, and I'm at the foot of this patient, and we're going back to faith. I said, God, I know, man, I'm getting chills right now. I said, I know you're a healer. And I said, just like in the Bible, when I saw you do this, I said, give me a testimony I can share with the world. And this is crazy. We're doing this right now. I said, if you bring this boy back right here, I'm going to share with the world. I said, do not let him die right here. And I just start praying. Now, people on my left and right, I talk loud. And I'm already told you I'm big. People looking at me like, what? I'm there. I prayed for this man, Dr. Dale. I promise you I'm not lying. And people might not believe, but that's on them. I lived it. I finished praying that prayer. 10 seconds later, this boy's heart started back. That was ROSC. And for people who don't know, return of spontaneous, circulation, his heart started back. And when my other patient, my first question I answered, I was operating and I was leading the case, and his heart stopped. And I stopped and I gave directions, and I looked and told people what they needed to do. We put this patient back to where they were, supine, so we could start compressions. I prayed the same prayer. I said, God, what you did for that little boy, in a moment, I said, do it right here and give me a testimony I can share with the world. Dr. Dale, I'm doing it right now. And I think, as a man thinketh, so is he. But really, your faith is everything, because if you test God in this and you say, God, I want to see miracles. God, I got into this so I could be the hands and feet of Jesus. I really wanted to see you heal people. And I know I'm in a place where we have to prove things and we have to, know black and white. I'm going to create space for you. Lastly, I had a patient recently who had a lot of burns, and I had to debride them. And it was very painful. This patient, we ended up praying together. This patient said they were part of faith. I never imposed prayer on anyone, but this patient was talking about it, and I prayed with them. The calm in the room was palpable. And you could say it was because the patient felt comfortable. You could say it's because I felt confident and comfortable. At the end of the day, I know prayer works. And if people want to pray with me, I'm open. And that's why I changed my name to the Praying Doctor on Instagram. And I think it's vulnerability, that knowing God is bigger than us. A lot of doctors, and especially surgeons, can have a God complex. And I think that's dangerous and bad, because faith doesn't mean that you aren't prepared or you don't have confidence. And a lot of people look at faith like, oh, it's a crutch. No. Faith is, I do what I do because of him. And I can do this because of him. Therefore, it helps me elevate in ways I can't do in my own confidence. Because man will fail and man is imperfect, but God is perfect. So I pray with patients if they want to. And I've had some beautiful moments.
I love it, man. I love it. Like you said, you told God you share it with the world. We're going to put this out there. And anybody who sees these clips, y'all need to reshare it so that testimony can go, and people can know that God's working. One thing that frustrates me is when you have like a family and you're praying and things like that, and sometimes you see a doctor come by, they'll be like, they're in there, the doctors will make snarky little comments like, they're praying, there's no way that guy's coming back out, they're praying, and that just frustrates me to know that. So it's good to hear this testimony, right? And it's good for me, because I haven't heard one like that in a while, not even amongst my patients, right, in a while. So it's good to hear that. And these things need to be, in my opinion, these things need to be shared. These things need to be told. In medicine, they try to make faith be a taboo thing. But what I can tell you is that there's a God, right? I can tell you that God is real. I can tell you we ain't get here by ourselves, right? I can tell you that God is real. I can tell you I believe in the God of the Bible. And everybody doesn't have to agree with me, but I'm just going to tell you from what I've seen, from what I've lived, and just as important, from what I've taken the time to think through and to rationalize and to use my brain to process as well. It's not just like, hey, we're just making stuff up. So it's just really good to hear something like that. It's very refreshing, I'd say, to hear something like that.
And Dr. Dale, I think the reason people are kind of like, they back off, they don't equate God with love. No one would say, I don't want a loving doctor in the ICU. I don't want a loving surgeon. They equate God with their perception of him. Hate. Oh, I'm bad. Oh, because I'm not this or I'm not that. They equate God or religion or believing in Jesus Christ for me and you as an isolation. I see it as an opportunity to love on people. No one would say, "Don't love on me today." You know, their perception of my faith might be that I exclude them or look down on them. It's actually the opposite. So
Yeah.
I love the opportunity to show that I love you and I'm going to take care of you. And if you want to pray, I'm here and I'm going to share a sacred moment with you. And I think when people see their doctor operating in unconditional love, which is really the gospel of Jesus Christ, not judging people, not saying you're less than, not saying I'm better than you, if people can see the genuine love of Jesus Christ, I know there will be a revival in the hospital. I know people will pray outside the hospital. And I published papers that literally have shown if you have confidence and you believe that you'll have a good outcome, I've got data that says that increases your likelihood of having a good outcome, your engagement and your belief and confidence. Therefore, if you believe that you can have a good outcome and we can share that moment of faith, I believe God makes space and he's still a healer.
Amen. Amen. I love that. Love it. So, as we're coming towards the end here, talk to me about the Instagram, right? Or TikTok, whatever, all your different socials. What made you want to start getting so involved with socials? I'm the type of person back in the day we started getting heavily involved, and before it was kind of a big thing, and then we kind of slowed down, and now I keep on thinking I need to get involved, but then I never fully jumped back into it, right? With Instagram and things of that sort. Tell me, how are you using your Instagram, your TikTok? How are you? I think we use it in similar ways. You're a lot more effective and into it than I am. But just for the listeners, explain that general idea as to how you're using it, why you're doing that, etc.
Excellent. And I had this question recently because I actually got blessed to have a post get over like 1.1 million views. This is my first big post ever.
Wow.
And that was a blessing and a testament. It goes back to the heart of why I do everything. I started Manny Mac Medicine, my YouTube, when I got into medical school. I was so grateful to finally get in after trying over and over again. I said, I have to share this and help somebody else. It was an intrinsic, really requirement that I felt that was there for me. When I got into social media and sharing that, and people started saying, "Hey, I was going to quit, but I kept going." And people say, "Hey, I got in medical school too, and I've been watching you from the beginning." I said, "Oh, this isn't just like, oh, that's a nice thing. This is needed, and this is a part of my purpose. Everything I do is purpose." So now I changed from Manny Mac Medicine to the Praying Doctor. And I'll tell you this: I had a family member, a very close family member, have a large life health event. And this family member's in his 30s. And I went to the ICU and we prayed. And they let us stay. And God healed this family member. Same prayer. God, do it. And we prayed like nobody's business. And God did a miracle. ICU doctor came to me, showed me the CT scan, said, "You're a doctor. You understand what this means. Trach and peg." And for those who don't know, that means this injury is so bad, your function, you won't be able to eat. You're on your own. We won't trust that your body can handle the normal functions. Therefore, you're going to be on a vent and you're going to have to eat with a tube into your stomach. I said, "Thank you very much." We closed that door and we prayed, Dr. Dale. And this is answering this question. I told God, and I'm telling you guys, faith is really a relationship with Jesus Christ. I said, "Jesus, if you heal this family member, I'm going to post a prayer video 30 days in a row." I said, "I'm going to post a prayer video 30 days in a row, tell the world about you." At that moment, I had like 2,000 followers. Each video, I would get 100 views, 200 views. I said, "I'll post one a day." I said, "Do this." So before the miracle happened, I posted it 30 days in a row. Well, Dr. Dale has started getting traction and more people start watching. Now we're, that one video, got over 1 million views and God worked this miracle. So that is the long way to answer. I have a relationship and I feel like my relationship with Jesus Christ, a part of that, him getting me over all these humps, is not for people to be like, "Wow, Emmanuel, you did great." I got a message. And he put a message in a large, grateful human being. Because I'm still the short, fat kid on the inside who shouldn't be here. And since I'm so grateful and I remember him bringing me here, I got to tell the world. I make a lot of people angry by it, but it is so funny, Dr. Dale, having walking in the halls and people recognizing you in the hospital. "Hey, you're the guy from Instagram. Hey." And it's wild, it's weird, but God gets the glory nonetheless. So I really
I was about to say,
appreciate that.
I was about to say, everybody, every time I have a podcast episode, there's always a theme I pick up from the guest, and your theme is clearly working to glorify God. Working to glorify God. Everything to do, all the glory goes back to God. Yeah, I got a medical, glory to God. This patient lived, glory to God. Instagram blows up, glory to God. Everything is definitely glory to God. That's the theme that I'm picking up here. So, this has been great. And, let's keep on going. Like I told you, I'm trying to do a better job running over my time. And we're already X amount of minutes over. For the listeners, man, just so many things. I want you guys to go back and really listen to some of the stuff that he said, right? Go back and watch this one again. For a variety of reasons. There's a lot of great information about, adversity, things of that sort. But for me, just because, Emmanuel and I share the same kind of spiritual background, that stuff is important. And even if you don't believe in the same things we believe in, you might not believe in the same God we believe in, whatever. I'm not forcing you to do any of that, right? Just take the time yourself to try to figure some stuff out. Take the time yourself to love on others. Is exactly what Dr. McNeely said, right? To really love on others. That's where all this stuff really, that's where everything goes. I was just making a presentation. I'll be in Memphis speaking this weekend. I was making a presentation on this general, like on mentoring and stuff like that, right? At the end of the day, mentorship is about love. It's about loving on others, right? So take the time to just kind of explore those things and try to get in tune with with I don't even want to say your spiritual side, but with God. And see where that goes, right? That's all I can say. Just kind of take a moment to see where that goes. But go back, listen to the stuff, these testimonies. Those of you who are willing to share it. Let more and more people hear those clips, right? Because those are things that need to be heard. Medicine sometimes, we always talk about science. Yes, it's 100% science. Science is just evidence. It's just a proof describing the things that God has already created, right? So that's what this is all about. So share. All right, listeners. Now, 2 things to do. Number 1, hit the subscribe button, right? We're trying to work on growing this. I'm trying to be a social guy, trying to grow the social media stuff. Hey? So hit the subscribe button. Do that. And number 2, there'll be more videos around here, more stories like Dr. McNeely on our channel. Go back, watch these stories, and just see how they impact your life. See how they touch your life. See how they motivate you, inspire you, invigorate you, right? Give you the energy you need to go out there and do great things. First thing. Now, let's end this episode by Dr. McNeely getting the platform and saying, "My name is Dr. Emmanuel McNeely, and I am a black man in a white coat."
My name is Dr. Emmanuel McNeely, and I'm a black man in a white coat.
When I go get it, stop playing around.